Hello lovely folks. Today I'm going to be showing you how to make this 4-strand faux whipcord. It's a faux whipcord because whipcord is speculated to have been done with bobbins. However, my bobbins aren't ready yet. I will make you a video and show you once they're done, but for now I'm going to show you the faux whipcording technique that I've developed. And it's a little bit different today because we're making it for these cheeky little shoes that lost their thonging that they came with on the first day of being used. So we need something that's going to stay put. So what I've done is for this braid I've used a waxed linen. I've doubled it up here so that I can split it at the bottom. You can see here how that braid splits into two. And that's going to be important because I want to make sure these don't come undone again. So through one of these eyelets here, we're going to split the braid and carry it on the other side to make sure they don't fall off again. So I've got here my linen cut and ready to go. I'm using 8 strands for each cord. It's a 4-strand braid, but I'm doubling up the strands to make a slightly heavier duty cord. As you can see, that's quite a lot thinner than that, and this is going to be much easier to tie as a lace than these little skinny ones for little hands. So I'm going to go and get set up. I've got 2 sets here for 2 laces. While I do that, Editing Weirdling is going to tell you about the evidence for this type of braiding. See you in a bit. Before we get started, I just want to say a massive thank you to ElvenDale, who very kindly gave their permission for me to use samples of their music in today's video. ElvenDale is an ancient music project from Nottinghamshire, England, and the music is played on reconstructions of authentic musical instruments from Dark Age Northern Europe. Awesomeness! Dark Age music from the Mead Hall. You can find them on Facebook and download their music from Bandcamp. Check out the links in the description. You will be hearing more from them here in the future. The first piece of evidence we're going to look at is from Margaret Hold's work, Ancient Danish Textiles from Bogs and Burials. This version of the technique is worked with bobbins, so the diagram you're seeing here is looking at it from above. There isn't much description of how the braids were actually used, but this does give us an idea of the very simple, basic 4-strand slinging or whipcording technique that was known about during this period. In the same publication, she talks about this finger-braided version of a whipcord, which is really cool. Although it's not the method we're going to be using today, it does give us a strong foundation for saying that these whipcords could actually also be done with finger braiding techniques. Finger braiding techniques are usually used to make shorter cords, as the bobbins allow you to keep a lot more wool wound up and ready to use than you can easily manage just with your hands. The second piece of evidence that we're going to look at is from Skjoldehamn. The little ties on the sides of the hood were made using this 4-strand technique, or one very, very similar. In his master's thesis, Dan Halvard Lovelid describes the braids that were found in great detail and offers us a diagram again of a very, very similar technique to the one that Margaret Hald describes, except you're looking at it backwards in this diagram. Here's a version of the Skjoldehamn Hood that I made, and you can see I've made my ties significantly longer because it's a lot easier to work with that way, but it gives you added functionality in that in the picture you see there. You can use the strings to pull the hood forward, keep it close around your face, nice and warm. What you can also do, if you're fond of your peripheral vision, is to use the cords to tie the hood back. Tie the ties behind your head, and that keeps the hood close to your head but back away from the sides of your face, which could be quite useful in a variety of situations. This is another one that I've made, and you can see in the close-up there that it's that same 4-strand braid made up using my version of the technique that I'm going to teach you today. The hood there is one of the few instances we have where we can definitively say this braid was used on this garment for this purpose. However, these are multi-purpose little braids. They're so quick and easy to learn. I'm going to show you a few other ways that I use them. Firstly, drawstrings and bag ties. You'll end up needing a lot of these if you're a reenactor for carting kit around and storing things when the public are around, and they make excellent drawstrings. They also make really nice little bag ties as well. You can make them as bright and beautiful as you like, or as simple and functional as you need. On something a little bit different, I've used them on the ends of my fillet to make ties to keep it tight to my head before I pin everything to it when I'm being an Anglo-Saxon woman. Have a look there at the very corners of the fillet when the braid joins, because that's actually a split braid. I'm going to talk about that later in the video and you'll see how that's done. Although in this example it starts as 2 braids and combines into 1, whereas what we're going to be doing is taking 1 and splitting it into 2. Here I've used it as decoration covering my hemming stitches and as closure cord on the nail binding needle case that I made for myself. These braids are done with exceedingly fine wool. They're doubled up as we're going to be doing today, but they still make a very fine and delicate braid. And it just goes to show how the weight of your starting cord can really make a difference to how this braid turns out. Carrying on the theme of decoration, here the braid is used along the joining line between the neck piece and the main body of a tunic, just right along the edge, covering up any little hemming stitches that might be visible that have been used to hold down that facing piece. When doing this, I used a slightly different technique. What I've done is I've started off with the cords inside the fabric so that you start the braid on the piece of work itself. Braid a little bit, sew it down, braid a little bit more, sew that down. You do need to make sure you start with a long enough piece to go all the way around your piece of work when you're doing this, but it does make it much easier to make the joins very neat if you're using this as a decoration on clothing. We'll do a little video about that another time. And lastly, the way I find myself using this cord all the time is making simple neckline closures for tunics. In these examples, you can see how you can make them exceedingly fine and almost invisible. On the right there, I've just made a little triangle of linen to fix the braid onto on the inside piece at the top of the keyhole neckline. This is a really useful thing to do when you're making your clothing, because at first you may not have found your brooches yet, you may not be able to afford your brooches yet, and so your lower status kit, having ties on your clothing is absolutely fine in most reenactment circumstances, particularly these tuck inside the clothing and you can't see them. However, when you move up to pinning your kirtle shut with a brooch or a pin, having that little triangle in there can just give you a really secure, firm place to pass the pin through that isn't going to fray or damage as easily as the single layer linen might. You can see in this example that I attached the cords on the inside of the hem, so that when you've tied it closed, you can barely even see that it's there. With the higher status garments, I tend to try and choose cord that matches well with the outfit. They're very fine again, they're made from linen on these linen tunics, usually from the same thread that's been used to sew the garments, just doubled or tripled up to make it thick enough. Another thing that I've tried using them on, as you can see on this woolen tunic, is making exceedingly tiny little brooch loops for passing the pin of your brooch through, so you don't have to keep stabbing your fabric each time. These have also got ties as well, because the chap wanted ties on them until he got his brooch, at which point he'll probably just tuck the ties inside or take them off. Now he has his brooch for closure. And last but not least, the same little technique on linen of ties and brooch loops combined. So as you can see, this technique is extremely versatile and will come in handy in all sorts of ways. There's probably a lot I haven't even tried yet. I encourage you to experiment. Okay, we're now set up and ready to go. I'll pop this one up there out the way for a minute. We're going to do stage 1 on both braids before we move on and attach them to the shoes to continue. Now here you can see, if I draw my threads up, I've got one side a little bit shorter than the other, and that's because the actual middle of the braid is hopefully going to be in the middle of that little slit in the leather thong. So we want to leave a little bit of extra so that we don't end up too uneven at the end. So I'm going to start working on this shorter one and pop the longer one up out the way for a moment, and then we need to separate our strands into 4 groups. Now on the diagram I just showed you, the 4 points you were looking at, it was almost as if it was from above. The way this faux technique works is that it takes that and it flattens it into a finger braiding technique. So it's going to look a little bit different. But I spent quite a long time trying to work out how that would work. And also a way to make it work that felt natural to my hands and didn't take forever, because I've tried quite a lot of the other methods and they didn't work very well for me, which is why I'm making a video about this one, just in case for you this one is easy as well. So what you end up with is a reversed version of slinging, sort of a backward slinging, because when you're slinging you generally pass palm to palm like that, and then palm to palm like that. So right hand to right hand, left hand to left hand. This technique actually makes it so you're passing across the back of your hands, but the braid structure is exactly the same. And there's quite a lot of different ways to do this technique. Sally Pointer has a video on 4-strand braids that includes a technique for a round braid. It's different to this one, but it makes the same braid at the end. So there we go. All right, to get started, you're going to take your 4 cords. It's a 4-strand braid. This one has 2 threads in each strand. To begin, you start on the right, you pass over 2 threads, and then these 2 remaining threads, the middle comes over the top and becomes your outer thread on the right. That's the first stage. Second stage is starting from the left with the outer thread. You come over 2, take your middle thread out over your top thread. Now with this linen, before I go any further, I should tell you about the linen I'm working with, because I'm using waxed linen. So it's very sticky. It's heavily waxed because I want these laces to last in mud and other fun things children like to jump in. So I've used the waxed linen thread here because it's going to stand up well to the elements. It does make it a little bit tricky to work with because it's very sticky. If you want to try with this thread, this is the one I'm using. Even though it's sticky, it's actually really nice to work with, and I think it's going to last well. So off we go. Starting on the right, coming over 2 and twist. Starting on the left, come over 2 and twist. Once you get a bit faster at it, well, that's the phrase that runs through my head. Over 2. Take the thread that's second in position now, over the outer thread, twist them together. Coming from the left, come over 2, take your second thread in, twist it over the outer thread. And that really is all there is to this technique. For me, this one just works up so much faster. Margaret Hald's version, you come over and then twist these 2 together. But I find that quite awkward. And doing it this way, you end up with exactly the same braid, so that's why I use this one. Over and twist. Over and twist. Now, as with any finger braid, as you're working, every now and then you just need to straighten your cords out, make sure they're not getting tangled up at the bottom. This is a fairly short length. I cut these to about 110 centimetres because I want my final braids to be around 90, maybe a little bit longer, just so that I can then try them on the child in question and figure out the exact right length for the laces, because I can just adjust them and twizzle a bit if I don't need quite as much. So you get about 15 to 20% wastage, shrinkage rather, when you're using this technique, usually around 15%. So that's useful to know for your calculations. Over and twist, over and twist. You can see there, as I'm working, generally keep the braid firm with my finger and thumb at the top there as I do it. This just helps keep the tension nice as you go down. Okay, I'm going to finish off this one, plait up the short side of that one up there, and I'll see you in a mo. Okay, I've now finished plaiting up the first half of the braid. Now we need to swap them around so it's sat like this so that we can start the next stage. So I'm just going to show you how I do that. Just very gently slide it off the end of the chopstick there. And being really careful not to mess about with this bit too much. Just going to gently roll that off there. And then I'm going to let it straighten out, keeping a hold of that bit at the top where we've braided. Just give it a little rub. The wax does make it want to keep its shape, which can be a little bit tricky. Just manipulate it a bit, soften it up, and it will all start to come apart again. Now, to fix it again, to do this next part, make a loop like that around the back of your fixing point. This is where my trusty chopstick comes in handy once again. Carefully feed it through. Don't be too rough with it, because again you don't want to start untangling the bit you've done at the top there. Very gently, keeping a hold of that bit just there where the braid starts. Roll it up there. Slide it along a little way. Ready to work. Once again, I've just tied a little bit of string around my weaving frame to make this easier. Once you're set up nicely, move those bits to one side so you're just working on the one piece. Now, what you want to do here, this will be quite compressed, but just very gently and to ease it apart so that you can trace the sets of threads. There's one. Two. 3 and 4. Now we're going to split these into 2 sets. You don't want too big a gap up here at all, so you want to find 2 that are going to work nice and closely together. These 2 sets look lovely. So one set's going up out of the way. We're going to work on these 2 strands. We're going to split them. So we're going to have 2 sets of 4-strand braids for a little while before we bring them back together again. Bring them as tight as you can to the top without distorting this braid too much. And then you're going to use exactly the same technique as you did before. I'm going to make about 1 centimetre, maybe a tiny bit more, because in a minute I'm going to thread it through one of these on each shoe so that these absolutely cannot fall off and get lost. Genius! Okay, here we go. Over 2 and twist. Now with these ones, because they're only going to be very short and they're going to take some force, and try and get it as tight as you can up the top here. So we're going to go from the left over 2 and then cross that one across. Over 2, take your second one, over your first one. Lovely. Over 2, cross. You can see each time I do that last stage, I'm running my fingers down that outer thread. If you do that each time, you never have to worry about it tangling up, because that motion will always keep it untangled. Now, got maybe do one more set before I finish that bit. Okay, so I've now got a small section just there. What I'm going to do now, split these two back into 2, because when we use these again, they're going to be back to being a single double threaded strand. I'm going to pop those to one side and do the same on the other side. And there we have our 2 strands. In a moment they're going to come back together, but we need to wrap them around the part of the shoe first. So I'm going to do that now, and I'll see you in a mo. Okay, we're now ready to pass the back of our eyelet through this slit just here. That's going to firmly secure it to the shoe and stop this getting lost. Now this is your slightly shorter side, so on this shoe, because there's 6 rather than 7, there's not one directly in the middle, we want our shorter side to go through, only have to go through 2 slits there after being fixed. So for this one, you're going to take our cords here, just run your fingers along each pair before you start, just to make sure they're all nice and together for the next stage. And then take your 2 that are going to pass through the slit, feed along till you get to the end and just roll. Make a little point to pass through this slit here. There we go. Pull it all the way through. Obviously when you're doing the other shoe, this will be reversed. So this is the outside of the shoe here, the outside on the other side of the shoe, you'll come through this way. So you're now through. And what we need to do now is going to take this cord up and fix it again to my fixed point at the top there. Bear with me one moment and I'll show you what that looks like. we go, they're just fixed on at the top there to give us some tension as we work. So you need to keep this nice and straight. Even though the shoe is there, it's going to want to pull it about. But work from your fixed point and keep your tension together, and that way you'll get a nice strong braid. So we're going to separate out our double strands, particularly that one you've just squished together to get through there. Separate out those double strands into 4 once again. And then we're going to use exactly the same technique as we have been all along to join the 2 little skinny ones back together. Pass over the top, twist your bottom 2, pull that thread out nice and tight, pinch it at the top while you bring the second lot in. So you're crossing this one over 2, then you're picking up your second one in, you're twisting it, bring it all the way out. That's one set. Wiggle it around till you're happy and carry on braiding. Now, you don't need to see me do all the rest of that, but I'll just give you a little close up here now of what we've got with the eyelet. So that now is exceedingly firmly attached. It's not going to go anywhere, it's not going to get lost and left in a field somewhere. And this waxed cord is going to last a lovely long time. Probably until she's outgrown the shoes, we hope. So I'm going to finish this braid off. I'll be back in a bit to show you how to finish the ends off nice and securely. Okay, braided that all the way down now and we're ready to secure the end. It'll look like this when you're done. What you need to do is find where the natural last cross is. So those 2 there that cross. What you're going to do is you're going to take this one and this one so that they're tying over these 2. And this will stop it all coming unravelled. Get it nice and even before you do the final tighten. Lock that in place there. What you're then going to do is bring one behind, one in front, and knot this one between those 2. It's nice and even. And then tighten it up. Then you pull it all downwards. Give it a good squish. Now, if you were working in wool or linen, that probably wouldn't be secure enough. But because this is heavily waxed thread, that isn't going anywhere. And I know that because you can see this rather rough bit up here. I made this one a bit too short, so I had to undo the knot and do it again. So because on these shoes the join part isn't exactly in the middle, it's off to one side, what you need to do is line up your shoe, run the laces through your fingers so that you've got equal amounts each side. It's not completely perfect, but it's close enough. So I'm just going to trim off the ends at the same length as the little fringe. And now I'm going to thread these through. So again, make yourself a little point just to make it easier to thread through. And there we have one replaced lace. Isn't going anywhere. That is firmly attached here. That's not sliding out and getting lost in a field somewhere. It's a nice chunky cord, which means it's easy to use, easy to knot for little fingers. That's not going anywhere. It's not going to come undone. You can group them all together on the top of the shoe, and the wax holds it nicely in position. Now, if the wax starts to come off, you can reapply it. If you find the thread's got a lot more flexible and it's dangling too much, you can shorten them. Just snip off the knot, unbraid a little bit, retie it further up. Trust me, you're not going to want to try and get this knot undone. It's really not fun. I need to go and do another shoe. I'll be back in a bit to show you the finished pair. And here we are. 2 fully relaced shoes ready to go. Ready to go on the feet of the young terror who lost the thongs on her first day wearing them. They're really nicely secured at the back. They're not going anywhere. Even if this comes undone, that's not going to go anywhere. We'll test them out at this length, and if we need to shorten them, so be it. We'll do that. Not a problem. I'd rather leave them a little bit too long at first than end up not having enough. So if I show you, I'll get them the right way around. As I was saying when we were talking about threading through these eyelets, when you've got your 2 shoes sat like that, if you've picked this slightly outer eyelet as your fixing point, the outside of the shoe is going to be the shorter length, because you need that extra bit of length going round here to balance it out. And it does come out on these about 1.5 inches. It's quite a lot. It's more than I thought it would be, but we got there. It's all good. Leaving that little extra 10 centimetres of thread at the beginning really did help. The waxed linen is extremely tough and waterproof as well, so it's not going to rot and disintegrate. Awesomeness. Can't wait to get these on her in a field now. Yay! Hello lovely folks, well done if you've made it this far. You get to get the bonus content. Woohoo! Okay, so what I've got here is 2 lots of the same braid made with the same colours, 2 strands in brown and 2 strands in green. If you look here, you can see the pattern comes out quite differently depending on how you start your colours off. Now firstly, if you start off with the same colours on each side, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 2 green, 2 blue, brown, brown, that's the one, what you'll get is this lovely twist here. You can see it spiralling along there. Sorry the image quality isn't brilliant this time. I'll try and get a nice still photo of all these at the end for you. So, you've begun your braid. Position number 1, crosses over and flip. Cross over and flip. Cross over, flip. Cross over and flip. And that will make this lovely spiral. That's my favourite way to do this braid. Now, before we carry on, I'm going to show you how to make an eyelet. What I would suggest is wait until you are back at your starting position, 2 green, 2 brown, so you know where you're going to start again once you've finished your eyelet hole. Now, because you can't make a 4-strand braid with these, what we're going to do is just ply them together nice and tightly. Hold the ply with your thumb and forefinger there. Go, come in the back with your other thumb and forefinger and twist. Hold on to it. Twist. Don't let it go. Hold on to it. Twist until your eyelet's the desired length. Pop it down. It's going to try and untwizzle, so you may want to pop a clip or something on there. One moment. Same again with this one. Except this time you're going into the top and twisting. Doesn't matter which way around you do this really, as long as you keep that twist in place all the way along. Now undo that one. So just coming down, try and keep it nice and tight. Use your clip again here just to hold it in place while you sort out your cords again. Now you're back to your starting position. 2 greens on that side, 2 blues on that side, 2 browns, sorry, why do I keep calling that blue today? Come over, lock in place with a twist. Keep good tight hold of it. Come over, lock in place with the twist there.
Farewell, my king, my love, my lord, bereft of life, of crown and sword, I'll cry for thee forevermore. Thy soul shall ever guard the sea and shore.
Now take your clip off. Do a few more, you can see the pattern starting to reappear. And what you then have is a cord with a nice twisted eyelet in it, like that. And that won't come undone because the twist is locked in place by the continuing braid. Woohoo! Now we're going to put this one down for a minute. In fact, I'm just going to do one more so that I've got my sides nice and balanced. The camera on my way past. One more set to get back to the starting position, and then when I come back to this braid later, because I will finish it, which will go on the great basket of braided loveliness. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to very quickly tie a little knot and then go and get my camera charger, because the flash has just died on this because it's taken me that long to record this video. So that's nicely done there, and we will be back in just a moment. Okay, for the second version, we're starting off with our threads alternating green, brown, green, brown. What that gives us is this lovely vertical pattern on the braid here. If you've watched Sally Pointer's video, this is the pattern that she ends up with. And so, our starting position, green comes over 2, don't forget your twist, brown comes over 2, and twist. Once again, I'm going to make an eyelet, however this time, just to be a bit different, you're going to have a thread of each colour. So instead of a single colour eyelet, we'll have the twist.
as befell the heart of a swan. Nightfall and shrouds, but no star ever shone to light her legend. The wind had proclaimed a song of her sorrow, or spoke of her name. Oh, the grief she did bear. Oh, he did the fair. Her bones are laid, but none nowhere. Oh, he did the fair.
You bring them together, you can see that they are both spun in the same direction. You can do it the other way if you prefer. I just like making sure they're the same. Make sure you're back at your starting position with no twist in the top, because that's what I did that at the beginning. I twisted it before it was actually ready, and then it got to the other pattern. So we can try again. But back to where we started. Green, brown, green, brown. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 passes makes a complete set. And here we are, we're back with our vertical patterned braid again, almost like little diamonds. Again, I'll show you a close-up photo of all of these in a bit. Now, with this one, it's a little bit harder not to get your threads confused, but if you always come back to that starting position where you know on this side green is going to be the outer one, pop your clip on, then just loosely knot it at the beginning. That's my daughter distracting me. Now if you look up here, there's your eyelet. All sorts of reasons you might want an eyelet in a cord. Now you know how to make one in a 4-strand braid that doesn't have double strands. And last but not least, for funsies, we're going to do a 4-colour one. I'm not particularly fond of the 4-colour version, but we're going to do it so you can see it, and then you can make your own mind up if you want to try it. Let's go!
Oh, many long winters ago, when the old gods roamed the earth, Skjolds sang their songs of brave men, lays of valour and of worth. In the once great halls of yore, by the glow of the warming hearth fire, tales of old kings and their great deeds, and the weaving wordsmith's lyre. Oh, many a shield maiden
Actually, that one's come out surprisingly well. I quite like that. That's unusual.
and their sons did hear them well, for those in battle must be bold.
And here we have our 4 ways with a 4-strand braid. First of all, we've got our plain one in the waxed linen. Then we have our 2-colour braid that was started with the same colours on each side. Then we have the pattern where we alternate our colours. And finally, we have our chunky 4-colour version here. Let's have a close-up look at these, shall we? This is our chunky single colour. See there with our split, our divide that we made our eyelet loops from. Really strong, really tough, great heavy duty option. Secondly, my personal favourite, the 2-colour 4-strand braid, starting off with your colours, 2 on each side. And there, that's quite difficult to see. It's our eyelet hole. Thirdly, we have our 2-colour 4-strand braid, started off with colours alternating. That gives us this very definitive vertical striped pattern. And here is our candy twist version of the eyelet hole. And last, but certainly not least, our 4-colour version. This has actually come out a lot nicer than I expected, considering it was a handful of scraps of wool that I grabbed out of the bottom of my wool tub. Pretty happy with that. I'd actually quite like to see how I could do it with some carefully chosen colours. That could be interesting. I think I'm going to go and try that in a bit. Well, maybe after a little rest. And that's all I've got for you today, folks. Thank you very much to those of you who've stuck with me this far. I hope you've enjoyed the video. If you've got any questions or comments, as always, pop me a message down below or come and find me on Facebook. Links are in the description, along with some research evidence for you if you'd like to dig a little bit deeper into the evidence we have for this type of braiding. As I said earlier, I am in the process of acquiring some bobbins, so there will be a proper whipcording / slynging video in the future, so watch out for that. For now, if you've enjoyed this braiding video, I have a whole playlist for that. You can check that out here. Have a wonderful day, folks. See you soon. Bye.